Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Photographers Inside the Photographer's Mind. I'm your host, Dan Jin, and this week I'm joined by our reviews writer, Brittany Smith. Brittany joins me on this week's episode to talk about some of the gear that she's been testing recently. She's going to talk about some Fujifilm gear, some Panasonic gear, and we're also going to take a trip down memory lane and revisit the camera that she first bought when she was 18 years old. We'll also be talking about some of the more political aspect of photography. We're going to be looking at sexual versus sensual photography, what the difference is and how we can define that line. And we'll be going through whatever comes up in between. Guys, before we get into the episode, please, just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying the podcast, do subscribe and do share. If you're watching on YouTube, then hit a like and leave us a comment. It can really help us out with the algorithm and get more eyes and ears on the podcast. And if you're listening on Google, Apple, and Spotify, hit a subscribe and you'll never miss an episode. Right, let's get into this with Brittany. Hello, Brittany.
Hello.
We're trying this again. We had a few technical issues, so this is a rerun. So if this first portion of the podcast seems a little bit, they've done this before, it's because we have.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, done it a couple of times actually. This is Brittany's second appearance on Inside the Photographer's Mind. So good news is you're still with the photographer. You're still happy here.
Yes.
And I get to speak to you again. So whoopee-doo all round.
Thanks for having me. It's great. I enjoy it.
So we're going to talk about some gear that Brittany's been testing, as well as some software. And then we're going to see where the conversation goes and takes us on a natural flow. I think we'll start with the Fujifilm 35 to 70 millimeter GFX.
That's what I have. So I do. I actually have it right here. I just got it from Lens Rentals just a couple days ago. So I'll take it off, but there it is. Nice. So I got it with the actual kit that it should come with. So the GFX 50S2. And so then you can see the barrel's pretty damn good. Oh, I got to quit that chat. Hang on 1 second about that, because otherwise this
no problem whatsoever.
Going. I need to quit messages and then hopefully it goes. But yeah, so it's this and then you have, it's pretty.
And sorry, it's what's it made out of? What's
So it's metal for the most part. Like you can hear, and then also the rubberized, or at least it feels like metal. I'll have to double check that. I'm like, before you quote me on that, it feels like it. It is possible that there's some plastic, especially given the price point that's usually indicative of such, that it's not made of as premium quality, which this probably isn't, but they did a good job. It feels good. So in the review, I'll have definitely the specifics of that, but I just got this.
That's fine. I am unfairly putting you on the spot there. It's like Brittany's just opened it up, and I'm like, tell me everything about this lens. So that is unfair.
I have no idea. I sat with you yesterday, and that's about it. I just got reacquainted with it, and the hard work's about to go into it now. So,
does it say if it's made in Japan or China? Because I know Fujifilm kind of shifted their production.
It doesn't, but it does say it's weather resistant.
Oh, that's good. Are you going to put that to the test?
I am. I'm hoping it's, Montana's in like its second winter right now. And I guess this is called Fool Spring. So right now we have like a nice week of spring, but we'll probably get some snow and some rain here. And if not, then I'll hose it down. We'll find out. So yeah,
hose down the
definitely
lens.
Put it to the test and make sure it behaves, but it's Fuji, so it probably will.
And what kind of subjects, where are you going to be directing this lens when you're testing it?
Everywhere. So it'll basically go with me everywhere. So if I go out to dinner or drinks with friends, they'll be test subjects. Inside restaurants, if the food's pretty, I'll probably do that inside. Just walking around, street photography, and then hopefully maybe some good landscape and some sunsets or sunrises here in the near future. Hopefully.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, something you mentioned earlier was this communal studio that is it a friend, colleague of yours that is setting up?
Yeah, so one of my dear friends, Tara, it's called AG Collective, and she's looking to get artists, photographers, all of that, and it's like a cohabitive workspace. And it's really cool because you can rent it out, if you're like, hey, I need it for a week, or if it's, if I need better internet for a podcast sometime, I can go rent it out. But she has this huge warehouse that you can shoot in. She just installed some backdrops. So there's really gorgeous natural light that comes in through the windows. And then it's also like, it can be an event space. So it's very forward thinking for Montana, and I'm hoping we're ready for it because, we're about 5 to 10 years behind the times. And this has been going on for about 5 to 10 years in the big cities. So
nice.
I'm pretty excited for it though.
No, I'm in a kind of a, not the similar thing, but I'm in a co-working, co-living space at the moment, but it's not just for creatives. It's I'm in Mexico City for those that don't know. And it's not just for creatives, we've got coders and front end, back end developers. You meet a lot of people like that. But yeah, having been around kind of like-minded people is it's inspiring, really. If you're around other creatives, you can feed off each other's energy. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has I had to joke because I have to put myself in timeout a lot. And I'm like, okay. I would love to have like a permanent desk there, but if I'm being honest, I wouldn't get shit done.
No, you just talk.
I would talk the whole time. Imagine that. Yeah. So I'm like, I have to put myself in timeout so that I can get my stuff done. And then I'll go visit, and maybe rent it out for a shoot. But yeah, I'm that problem child.
Okay. I hear Americans like Adderall. That's not an endorsement of Adderall, but apparently I was watching a Netflix documentary and everyone's on Adderall for focus, but probably not the best idea. I'm not sure.
What's so funny is my mom just messaged me. She's like, you know what? I think I'm like ADHD. I'm just like, okay. No, you don't. Because for us, they're just finding doing studies that a lot of us are. Yeah, we probably went undiagnosed for years as having ADD, ADHD, but we're fine.
How does that? How does your kind of mind impact when you're on a shoot, for example? Like, are you able to focus, or are you completely here, there, and everywhere? And how is that?
Oh, so if I'm going to be real here, so I have an agenda that I like to go through, and I have this nasty habit of saying, okay, we're, going to do this, and it's completely in my head, and then it starts working and I trail off and stop talking. Okay. And just start going in me, and usually people that are used to me, they're just oh, yep, we're in the groove. This is great. Here we go. But if it's a novice client, they're just what the hell? What do you mean? Can you finish that? Can you keep communicating? Because I lost you there for a second. So it is what it is.
but do you find photography settles your mind? Because ADD, ADHD is amongst many of the things that it's very difficult to relax. There's all this energy and stuff like that. Do you find cameras help?
Yes, because it kind of helps distract what you're going through. So it's just one more thing to, because your mind is all over the place. It's like a ping pong board, but it forces you to get in the moment. At least that's how I feel with it, and I think I just put that connection together. Thank you. That's probably half the reason why I find it so therapeutic.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hey, I'm in the moment. This is working. This is great. I love it. So
that's good. Now, so we don't, because you've just got the Fujifilm 35 to 70 millimeter GFX, it'd be unfair for me to ask you what your overall thoughts are. But it sounds like first impressions are positive, and we'll have a little bit more data, as you guys say, when you've gone out and pestered all your friends and enjoyed this.
made it
maybe
off.
when you ring them up, hey, we should hang out. Is their immediate response? What are you testing?
It's been that way for a few people.
Yeah.
It's getting that way for a few people. And then some of them are just like, hey, I'm starting to get the emails. If you get this in, please let me know because I need to know your opinion before I order it. So it's, some of them are super exciting. They're like, any chance you're getting this to review? And honestly, I don't know. It's just like, hey, you're doing this. Like I'm getting some film this week and we're going to put my film camera to test. So it'll be great.
So you got a new film camera. Is that true?
No, I don't have it.
No.
So it's my first camera.
First camera.
It's my very first big purchase. I took a loan out for it. Bought it when I was 18 years old. Yeah, it's my first love.
So do you mind me asking how much that was?
Oh God. So I got a student discount and I think it was still almost $3,500 back in the day. Yeah.
So when you were 18, so this was 3 years ago. And it
yeah, I am forever 29.
so this was an analog, a film camera.
Yeah.
For $3,500.
So yeah, it's a completely analog camera.
Which camera is it? Sorry, I've asked.
It is I have it.
Okay.
It is a Hasselblad 501 CM. So that is your viewfinder.
Okay.
So if you were to look through it, I mean, it's a lovely ceiling fan, right? But
nice.
But yeah, so it's a little 80 millimeter. My f-stop, you can see my aperture go. But the best part is, so completely analog. This is your film tray. Pops out. And yeah, I paid extra for it because it's yellow. Okay.
Does something like that keep value?
I'll walk in there in just a second.
Sorry,
Boom.
does a camera like that keep value or? Actually,
it does. So if I were to sell it today, the last time I checked, I could still sell it for over $2,000. Some of them that are in good condition are still selling for almost exactly what you paid for it. And then the super rare editions, because Hasselblad has a habit of that. They're like, hey, here's one really great model and we're going to rebrand it 20 times. Okay. I'm being a little over eccentric there. But so there's a couple really special ones. There's red with gold trim and stuff like that. And you're looking at almost $20,000 for some of those. But the yellow
$20,000.
Yeah.
Oh my days.
And I think Chris just posted his Mamiya is almost doubled in value that he bought 2 years ago or something like that. So yeah, medium format cameras do tend to hold their value pretty well. And this is a special edition. There was only so many made. And I don't plan on selling it, but I've had a lot of offers to buy it if I ever do.
So let's go back in time then. So you're 18, you've just taken out, God, $3,500 at 18. It's a lot of money, even when you're getting it on a loan or however you guys word it. But why did it have to be that camera? Maybe someone would have gone and got something a little bit more economical. Let's see if I really want to pursue this kind of thing. But you were like, no, I want that camera, and we'll see what happens. I'll either be in a world of debt and regret it, or as is obvious, it ended up being a great decision. But tell me about your thought process. What's 18-year-old Brittany thinking?
So I have this really bad habit of it's still the same. Now I'm just 30-something-year-old Brittany. So the phrase ready, aim, shoot. Mm-hmm. I am a ready, shoot, aim person.
Okay.
So I sort of think about it. I dive in 100%, and then I'm like, oh shit, what did I just do?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a habit I'm not going to be able to shake. But so my first couple months, so this would have been after 2 months of being in photography, that was my elective in college, and I fell in love, and I was shooting 35 millimeter, And one of my best friends at the time that got me into it, we were talking, he's like, well, you probably want to go medium format. So we were looking at Mamiya and we were looking at Hasselblad, and my dad's a huge fan of Hasselblad, and the deciding factor was, he's like, it's Zeiss glass. You can't get much better than that. And so then I was looking in the Shutterbug ads, like, what I'm talking about, in the back of the magazines, and there's all of these ads.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it went from basic black to, they were doing, I think it's like emerald green, ruby red, sapphire blue, and sun yellow. Those might actually be the exact terms for them. And my favorite color was yellow. And I'm like, yep, this is going down. So the next thing I know, I'm in the bank. My dad's co-signing for me. Who needs a car?
I wonder what the bank assistant was thinking. Like, what
did you do for a camera? Really? I was going to school in southeastern Montana, and my hometown is less than 10,000 people. Well, it's about 10,000 people, and this wasn't really something people did for their livelihood. So I'm pretty sure I looked insane. It's okay. But
what kind of rolls of film do you like to put in it? Like, I'm such a ignorant to film. I'm just like, I think that's a question actually. Like, what kind of rolls of film do you like?
Well, I loved the 220, which would let you put like 24 slides into it. So this is only 12. But they discontinued most 220 film. In fact, they may have discontinued all of it. But so I use the 120 film, which is 20 slides per roll. And I really love, so my go-to is black and white.
Okay.
And I like the T-Max. Like if I want it a little grainier, a little more tonal, I'll go more T-Max. But if you want like the definite deep blacks and the super high contrast, which is usually what I go for, I really, really, really enjoy Ilford Delta. And I'm hoping to be able to get back to, I'm like, I have a closet downstairs. Could I move this water heater? Because does it have to be there? It would be perfect for a dark room. It's completely black. But, I want to get back to where I can do my own. I found it therapeutic. That's kind of my therapy. But for color, Fuji's breaking my heart with this. They keep pulling their films and I'm like, no, you need to double down. But I love Fujifilm, their Velvia. And I also really I didn't really so much use their black and white, but I also like Kodak Portraiture. Those were the ones I used most of the time. Yeah, but nice. I have to send those in.
Well, that was a lovely trip down memory lane, wasn't it? And kind of in the present moment as well. It's good that the camera's still serving you,
yes.
After you've had it this time. I think it's fair to say that was a loan that was worth it from the bank.
Yes, I'm still here.
So it'll bring things back to the present moment. I believe you've been testing the Panasonic 24mm f1.8. Am I right?
You're correct. Yes.
I'm correct. Excellent. Cool. How was that?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually. Like, I hadn't shot with Panasonic before. And so the camera itself that I had, it's very similar to the Leica SL2S. And I think it's just because of the whole alliance that they have with building stuff. So it was very similar for the real estate. The lens is lightweight, super versatile. And I love that you can do the color profiles and the film profiles for Panasonic. I just wish Capture One supported them. Yeah.
What does that mean? So Capture One. So does that mean if you use the profiles in the camera, when you stick the images in Capture One, that the profiles don't show? How
they
does
only
it?
do if you shoot JPEG. So the RAW is unsupported. But yeah, so Panasonic has great film simulations that look just like the old the films, and they look amazing, but you have to shoot JPEG to get them to transfer into Capture One. And so Capture One does, Fuji, they're supported, most Sony's supported, but some of the ones that aren't like mainstream cameras aren't supported for RAW. It's just JPEG. And
Interesting.
yeah. So I'm like, come on, Capture One, do this.
So, were you testing that lens on is it a full frame sensor or
Yep.
crop set? Full frame. So 24mm used probably traditionally for maybe a bit of landscape, maybe a bit of photojournalism kind of stuff.
Right.
Why does it need to be f1.8? Does anyone need who would need f1.8 24mm in your opinion?
Anyone that wants to shoot without having to take long exposures and without needing a tripod.
Okay, yes, fair enough.
So I would say plenty of people, like a lot of photojournalists or, street photographers like yourself that want to go into a building and not be held hostage by having to have perfect light or a tripod. I'd say definitely some room for it.
I guess I'm probably just, I'm speaking from ignorance again there, which I love to do about everything in life, to be honest with you. If I don't know about it, then it's not true, is my take on life. But
sounds good.
Yeah, I
guess you'd be disappointed.
Yeah, that's true. I never really shoot wide open. So when I see these f1.8s or even wider, and I see people kind of lusting after them, I always think, are they really that important? But I guess they are. I prefer to shoot in just normal, natural daylight. So you'll seldom see me on a night with my camera kind of shooting around. So
for me,
I wouldn't go into.
It's what got the sunset for me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm like,
no, that's fine.
If it wasn't for the 1.8, I wouldn't have been able to get the sunset.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to these film simulations because I wrote something yesterday about Fujifilm's film simulations, and I said, whilst I like them, I don't think they're that great. I don't think the difference between each one is overly. Maybe that's because I've never shot film as well. So to me, I'm like, I don't see too much of a difference for me to care about which one I'm on. So you mentioned, Panasonic has them, Sony, obviously Fujifilm. Does Nikon do them?
Doesn't have as great ones. No, Nikon, Canon, and Sony are the boring ones. They're your standard, your landscape portrait. They're they're hitting. That's they're late to the game. They're pretty boring.
So how does Fujifilm and Panasonic compare then?
They're better. They're more realistic film simulations. Mm-hmm. So, it's just, for me, it brings back the nostalgia, which is why I thoroughly enjoy it, because I dabbled in those. And even being said, I tend to go back to, even though I'm a Velvia fan, I tend to use classic chrome.
Okay.
90% of the time when I shoot Fuji, that's what I shoot. And maybe that's just because I've adapted with digital and everything has to look a little bit more realistic. And that's probably the best option most of the time, to have a realistic representation. But the other camera manufacturers, they're pretty boring. And that, that they help Maston Labs sell a ton of their presets and stuff like that. But yeah, I 100%, I don't know. I could see your point, actually, that they might be a little boring, but with film, it's pretty fun to go back to memory lane.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, maybe boring's the wrong term. I just think, if I'm going to use them, I want to see an obvious difference in the image, and my eye just doesn't see it, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
it's just too subtle for me to care, really. I mean, I use high pro neg.
Okay.
And that's just because it was on that, and I've kept it on that.
And it works. Let's go.
And it works. So it sounds like the Panasonic 24mm f1.8 sounds like it's a good lens.
Yeah, it's
nice
versatile.
And sharp.
It's super versatile. The only thing that I didn't quite love about it, I like to shoot it as correct in camera as I possibly can, and that includes like getting the crop to where I don't have to touch it. Yeah. So if I shoot full body portraits, like there is some you go on YouTube and you're going to see reviews and they're like, there's absolutely no distortion whatsoever. And I'm like, oh, I have some portraits that beg to differ with you. Their head's not supposed to be that big, nor is their foot at the, the very edge of the frame. But other than that, so for that, I'm like, if you take your time and give them a little bit of space to offset it, yeah, it's pretty versatile. It's great for almost everything.
So you're someone who shoots portraits. I'd be interested, like, what is the widest focal length you think you would go to, keep a portrait realistic enough and where you don't get overloaded with distortion?
24, I think, is as wide as I would go.
Yeah.
So I'm like 28, you can still, 24, 28, you can manage it, but you can also really go with it and push it and make some really fun perspective shots that you wouldn't get otherwise. But I'm also to the point where, speaking of that, for portraits, where I was just talking with Chris, I'm like, I'm really bored with my 85 millimeter lens to where I haven't touched it for 2 years and I'm selling it.
Nice.
And I'm like, it's also that point where it's such an accurate representation where it's boring. So right now I'm looking at, 50, 20, I would say 24 to 50 would be my ideal. 35 bread and butter, 100%. I think 35 is perfect.
You wrote an article, we'll stick on portraits and things like that. So you wrote an article recently about posing hands stuff. So I've done I've done some portraiture, and that's one of the things I always struggle with. And when they're like, "What shall I do with my hands?" and I'm just like dead inside, like this.
Do with your hands.
There's like a bee just flying around where my brain should be, and I'm like, can't you just figure it out? Because somehow I don't know what it is. It just seems as soon as I point a camera at someone, I'm so aware of how awkward hands actually are.
And then if you point it out, you get this, even if they're, and you're like, can you put that on your thigh? Sure. You get the claws, and it's like all of a sudden, all of this stress is just focused there. Is this good? Is this good? You're like, no.
So I will overlay some images as well, so people watching the podcast can get an idea. But in best you can, like what are how do you approach the topic of hands in portraiture?
Gosh. So usually, like, it depends on where we're at, right? So I think the basic rule of thumb is if they're sitting, if they're standing, get them comfortable first and kind of see what that looks like. So like if they're sitting and they're like this, you can easily bring it up, but you have to see what they're the most comfortable with. Some people are going to lean onto an armrest, like some people are going to lean back, some are going to come forward on their hands. And so the first rule of thumb for me is to get them comfortable, and then they're already comfortable. And it's just, a matter of that. A lot of times I'll have them, just start soft. And so when they do this, it's just like, okay, shake it out. What does that look like? And if all else fails, you can kind of just do like a really soft fist and just to go. But the best thing that I do when I approach them is I look at what they're already naturally doing, and then I subtly progress it from there. And so, and like if I were having them sit down, so for instance, hold on, we'll just use my couch. Okay. So if they're sitting like this, right?
Yeah.
Your hand is already like this. So rather than that, you can bring their hand over.
Okay.
You can have them bring it up, right? And I'm probably not the most, I would be changing my angle so you're not getting a ton of this, but and it's like you can turn them, you can have it go, and then like if they're on their thigh, that's what I'm trying to say. That's the word I'm looking for.
Their thigh. Okay.
If they're relaxing, you can have them like one hand there, get asymmetrical a lot, but then it's easy. Like once you're there, you can bring it up and tell them, you don't want to push it into your face, but you're just resting. But you see like how much softer this is, like this type of thing. And it's just what they're already naturally doing. Yeah. And then, you can have them put their hands in their pockets. You can have them, if you cross them, just be careful that like men, this is, I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm resilient. And women, it's just like, oh, you're super closed off and unapproachable.
Okay.
So like just kind of also take into account societal norms with posing.
It's interesting that I never thought of it like that. And I would probably think that without even realizing I'm thinking that. If I saw a dude with his arms folded, I'd be like, he probably owns his own business. But if I saw a woman doing it, I'd probably be like, oh, I bet she's aggressive. Which is, and I appreciate that. That is
sad but true.
And unfair, but yeah, that is. So do you if you're doing a shoot, then do you feel obliged to go with the norms and be like, you can't fold your arms because you're a lady, or do you try and be like, yeah, fold your arms, who gives a shit? Pardon my French.
It really depends on a person's body. So a lot of times I don't give a shit, but at the same time, like if it's not flattering, if someone has short arms and a huge bust, there's no way that's going to look comfortable.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But if someone has like longer arms and they can put them down lower and still relax, 100%, I'll totally do it. I'm the short arm category. So I probably would do more of a, rather than fold the arms, if you do, probably bring it to the side, and just look over with it. But that's also what would be the most flattering to them. Yeah.
Got you. So it's kind of a case by case basis.
Yeah. It really depends on your client. Really depends on your client.
And I think that's a good thing for aspiring portrait photographers to realize, it's not just binary in the sense that, this is how women have to be and this is how, it's more about the individual rather than the gender. So, we're on a theme with portraits, and you've been working on a series for the Photographer about, please remind, am I getting this right? It's sexual versus sensual.
Yep. So just kind of doing sensual versus sexual, and some of it does have to do with hands and posing as well as styling and all of that. But basically keeping the focus as, focusing on sensual versus sexual, because sensual can translate to sexual, but a lot of times if you focus on the sexy and playing it up, it stays just that. Like that's what it is. And it usually leads to objectification. So I've been working on a series just kind of like, as far as styling. So it's like you can take clothes, for instance. You can have someone completely layered. I could add a scarf to this. And depending on the way that you light the subject, the way that you emote them, the way that you do the makeup, you can still push it sexy, right? And you can keep it simple. Same thing where if you go to like boudoir, right? You can take them down to absolutely nothing. And if you have like they're wearing hardly anything, but say you have them like hair's a little bit more natural, the pose is a little bit less sexy, their hands aren't like stressed and, like say like take hands for boudoir. If the hands are tense, it's usually insinuating like sexual tension, where if it's soft, it's more of a moment and more of feeling, if that makes sense. But so back to the whole no clothes thing. So say you pose it with like fishnets, red lipstick, super overdone. I mean, I like red lipstick, so let's take that out. But just like hair and makeup that are just overdone, right? And it doesn't feel as organic. That's almost like pinup. And like pinup itself was for men, and it was created, pinup was basically a way to feel sexy, but it was still dictated by men. Like that's how it came to be. But like, say you were to take it down, tone it down, it's in a more natural environment, natural light, natural hair and makeup and all of that. And like, maybe you draped a robe over it, or just or it could be like absolutely nothing, but the posing is good. You can still keep it more of a sensual, feeling versus just like 100% exploiting, oh, there's a naked woman's body.
So I have a question,
Okay.
and
I might have an
it's. I don't think it's a loaded. Well, it might be a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and we'll see how it goes. So here's something I was thinking. I see a lot of work on Twitter from female photographers,
Okay.
and not just Twitter, and some of the subjects. If a man was to take it, I'd be like, oh, I see what's going on here. You know, there'd be that kind of mandar in my brain. Like, I know what the objective is here. I know why you're trying to sell this as an NFT. And, you know, I also know why people will buy it. And then I was thinking, well, okay, if it's a female photographer doing the same thing, is that okay?
It depends on what the intention is.
Well, that is true. I don't think any male or female or trans photographer would ever explicitly admit that, hey, no, what I'm doing is I know that naked female bodies are going to earn me a ton of money. So that's what I'm going with. I don't think any of them, bar a few, would ever admit that. But I think you can tell, would you agree, when you look at an image, like, for example, sometimes they'll photograph a woman doing yoga in her underwear, and there are many different poses in yoga. And I'm like, oh, it's interesting that particular pose is the one that you've gone for, which does blur the line between, hey, that could be a yoga pose or softcore pornography. You know, there's a fine line.
It's going to depend on the angle, right? What angle is downward dog taken from?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
If her butt's in the air and that's what it is, like, softcore porn all the way, every single day. But if it's more head on, more perpendicular to the angle and the light's good, I would say that's more intentional worthy, where you're trying to get across the perspective versus corny. You know, and then light also has to play with it. Like, what is the light illuminating? Is it overall nice balanced light, or is it 100% on the backside?
There you go. And so let's just say, for argument's sake, some female photographers out there, their intention is, yes, this is sexual and this will earn me money. And they're using a female subject who's, you know, she's cool with it. Like, is that okay?
As long as there's consent, it's okay for regardless of sex, right? Regardless of who's shooting it behind the camera, as long as there's consent. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when, you know, they go in for an unassuming shoot and they're being sexualized and they don't realize it, but then it's communicated in the end result. That should have been communicated beforehand, and usually that, you know, the client's super unhappy and that results in a reshoot. So I'd say as long as there's consent, whether or not you like it, whether or not I like it, who am I to say? You know, they were on board.
No comment on my behalf about my opinion on anybody's work.
No, it's just, I look at, you know, it's just funny because you look at like Terry Richardson back in the day, which was the flash photography that, in my opinion, it looks like it really, like, it took a subject, the way that it was lit and the way that it was posed and all of that, and it took something that you'd see in a normal fashion image, and it's all of a sudden like, yep, we're going to make it a little sexy and we're going to make it look a little cheap.
Well, you know,
popular at the time, but at the same time, it's like you're looking back and some of it you're just like, yeesh.
Well, especially what we came to know about Terry Richardson and some of his behaviors on set. It's like
gross.
Yeah, gross, unfortunately. And, you know, it's hard to make, because for those who haven't seen Terry Richardson's work, you know, feel free to go explore it yourself. I mean, it's a lot of it's very explicit, you know, let's be honest.
Explicit and a lot of cringe, like today's standards, it's very cringeworthy.
Yes. And, you know, a lot of photographers hide behind the facade that, well, if it's art, it's fine because art's about expression and freedom, and a lot of people support that. But then years down the line, that same person, in this case Terry Richardson, has a plethora of sexual misconduct cases thrown at him. So it kind of, it kind of throws the artistic. Well, here's a question. Actually, that's a question. Can sexual photography, on the topic of sensual and sexual, can sexual photography be artistic?
I have a hard time saying yes to that because the whole intention is sexy, right? The whole intention is sex. So I guess the question is sex art? And that's going to come down to a lot of demographics in your upbringing and social norms. I think a lot of men would say yes, and I think a lot of women would say no.
It depends. So sex as a mainstream concept of what it's become, I would say no, it's not artistic, because we've very much in the mainstream, sex has become very one-dimensional in the sense that, and while women have their own sources of, whatever they like to look at, for the most part, sex has been what can women do for men, rather than what is if we look at sex in the purest form, like two people or more, whatever, coming together and sharing something that is equal, it's equal intention, about having a very nice, uplifting, pleasurable experience. Yeah. I think documenting that could be art.
I do. See, I'm like, that gives me hope, actually, hearing from a man, you saying no, but this. And I think what I hear you saying is if you focused more on the connection, right? Yeah. And the empathy. So you don't necessarily have to photograph the act, but maybe it's the emotions leading up to that. The slight look, the slight gesture, the light hand, the light touch, 100% that can be sensual. And that is kind of like a huge point of mine, that sensuality, which is that emotion, that connection, that 100% can translate as to sexy. But it's really hard when you go straight forward to sexy and focus on the sex to pull it back and make it sensual. Like once you've crossed that bridge, it's really, really hard to go that way. But sensual can definitely flip back and forth. And at the same time, you can do so in a way because you're connecting on that emotion and you're connecting on that feeling and that, that connection. It's also a lot more empowering for the subject that you're photographing. And, believe it or not, like we focus so much on women on this, but like I've had a lot of conversations with male models who were just like, oh my God, I just felt like a piece of candy right then and there, like I was a piece of meat being torn apart by dogs. Like our men feel it. They just don't talk about it as much because there hasn't really been a stage for it, and they too want to feel that sensuality. And I found that super interesting that they would actually rather, I don't know, be viewed as a person and have that connection, but like their perspective is the same too. They don't want to be objectified either. And I think in the industry, we're finally coming back to that. Like that's actually later than the women in the industry, but it's promising.
I do, and I think that the future is bold, especially with the younger generation. I've got a 17-year-old cousin, maybe she's 16, one of the two, and her awareness and her friends' awareness, some of them who are like young dudes and stuff, like they don't. What I grew up on in terms of consuming sexuality in a photographic sense or a video sense was just very extreme, very very. I don't want to play the victim, but for men and women of our kind of generation, I kind of feel sorry for us because we just had this super intense, super graphic, super kind of like one-dimensional imagery pushed in our faces that I don't know anybody my age who's got a successful relationship, either emotionally or intimately. But I think with the younger generation of photographers and the fact that models, both male and female and trans, will speak out more about feeling a certain way, whether it's being objectified or whether it's just a case of, hey, I don't feel objectified. I just feel I've got far more to give in this shoot than you're dumbing the shoot down to be. I don't really know how to sexualize a man, so I apologize. But putting a woman with her face on the floor and her backside in the air, we've all seen it. Yeah, great, whoopee do. There is such an opening right now for something fresh where we can bring together nudity, sexuality, sensuality, and it not in a more productive and less harmful way, I would say.
Right. Well, and I think part of that too goes through kind of what you just tapped on. A lot of this has to do with how our parents were raised and therefore how they raised us. Where the female body, the male body, like nakedness is taboo. It's bad. You're going straight to hell. Right. Where if we were to approach it in an artful and respectful way, you could be like, listen, this is beautiful. We're going to celebrate it. You should be proud of this. No, we don't have, we're going to respect this and we're going to respect each other. I think we would see a lot less objectification. I think if society were to get to that point where it weren't so bad, perceived as a terrible thing, where if we were to celebrate it, I think you'd see less hate crimes. I think you would see less violence towards everybody. I think you'd see a lot more vulnerability. And the vulnerability actually is where our strength lies, because if we're able to tap into what makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable and just be like, why do I feel this way? And keep asking why until it's broken down. And it's like, oh shit, because, my upbringing taught me blah, 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 whatever your upbringing is. I think it would actually make for a more peaceful, beautiful world.
We have got a long way to go, but what I would say is, because obviously this is a wider issue, this is a deeper issue. But I think in terms of bringing it back to photography, because we consume so many images now than we ever did before because of the internet, I do think photography has such an influential, important role to play in shaping how we view each other, how we view each other's bodies, how we view each other's role in the world in terms of sensuality, sexuality, humanity. I think where there's a problem, there's always people who want to fix it, and that's always a good thing. And I think we're getting closer towards where we want to be than we were 5 years ago, 20 years ago,
I do too. And I think what's happening is it's because people our age are fed up. We see through the bullshit. And it's just one of those, it's like, you sold us that everything has to be this way. This standard of beauty is accepted for men. This standard of beauty is accepted for women. Everything else in that, we're going to sell you a million things so that you can hit that standard of beauty. And we're just like, you know what? No, F that. That's bullshit. And there's a lot of love to give. There's no reason I need to be depressed and hate myself because I don't measure your standards. And I think what I love seeing is we're celebrating the imperfection, and I see so many photographers choosing imperfection and photographing it in a beautiful way. And it's just like, it's kind of exciting. Yeah. And I think that will help. And that gives me hope. And I hope we can still keep pushing that way. It'll only get better.
I think that's a beautiful ending to the podcast. I think that's no, it is, because it's inspiring. It's obviously Women's History Month as well, and it's good to talk about these topics all year round. But we can use this time this month to shine a little bit more light on it, if you will. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link to the series, the Sensual versus Sexual. Is it a 3-part series?
I think it's 4. I might be doing 5, and they're scheduled out. They're scheduled to come out over the next few weeks.
Okay. All right. Fair enough then.
Yeah. So I'm
your hands one. I'll link to that one.
Perfect. Perfect. We'll go from that. But they are coming, and hopefully we'll just kind of shed some light on it. And then the only piece of advice or the tip that I have to give would be to actually like lean into your emotions and feel it and connect with your clients. Because when you do that and you keep, the charge out of it, it's amazing when you start, like my favorite thing is I'm 100% an empath, and you get to that point in a shoot where you stop talking and you start feeding off of each other, and it's just a completely organic. That is when it's just I call them the boom images.
Yeah.
That's when it's boom. That's awesome. And that's where the magic happens. So it's, turn off the world, turn off what you're supposed to do, and lean into your emotions, and men too, because men are told you're not supposed to feel anything. And I, again, call bullshit on it. Feel it.
Okay. I'm going to go do some feeling.
Feel it. Sounds good.
I'm going to go do some feeling. Excellent, Brittany. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day and locking your cat outside to have this chat with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sure we'll see you again soon anyway.
Sounds good.
Cheers, Brittany.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye.
Well, thanks again to Brittany for speaking with me. If you want to listen to the show again, then it's available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. And also, just a quick reminder to hit subscribe and do share the podcast if you want other people to listen to it that you think will enjoy the show. I'm your host, Dan Jin, and I'll be back again next week with an episode of The Photographers Inside the Photographer's Mind. Until then, see ya.